I stood at the edge of the driveway, soaked from the October rain, holding nothing but a battered suitcase and the last piece of my grandmother's handwritten letter. My father didn't open the door. He slammed it shut behind me. My mother didn't hug me goodbye. She looked past me as if I were already gone. "You're not our daughter anymore," she said. "If you can't agree to sell the house, then leave it." For good. I had spent most of my adult life protecting that home. I skipped college to care for Grandma when her mind began to slip. I kept the garden alive, painted the porch every spring, fixed leaky pipes in the dead of winter. And still it wasn't enough. Not for them. Not when my younger sister Ashley returned from her perfect marriage with dollar signs in her eyes and whispered, "If we sell now, we'll be rich by Christmas." I slept in my car that night, parked behind a closed gas station. The seats were cold. My heart was colder. The only sound was the rain, tapping like fingers on glass, reminding me I had nowhere to go. That's when something cracked. And through that crack, a decision took root. A fire began to grow where fear used to live. I wouldn't just survive. I would rebuild. I would reclaim everything they threw away. My name is Natalie Carson, and this is how I turned their betrayal into something bigger than revenge. But before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. If your entire family erased you like a stain on a wall, would you forgive them? Or would you make them remember exactly who you are? Let's begin. Ashland wasn't a big town. It had one grocery store, one school, and one church that rang its bell every Sunday, whether you believed in God or not. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in memory. People here never forgot a scandal or a betrayal. And definitely not family drama. Growing up, the Carson name used to mean something. My grandparents helped build half the town. And our estate, Carson House, stood like a crown on Strawberry Lane. People admired us from the outside. Big house. Perfect smiles. Holiday cards with matching outfits. But behind the doors, it was all performance. My parents, Diane and Greg Carson, were respected. My father ran the town's top development firm. My mother led every fundraiser like a queen. But at home, there was no love. No warmth. Just rules. Schedules. Perfection. They didn't raise me with hugs. They raised me with expectations. Be quiet. Be useful. Be invisible if you must. Love had terms. Attention had strings. I learned early that loyalty came at a cost. Ashley didn't follow those rules. She didn't have to. She was the golden child. 4 years younger, but always center stage. She sang at school plays, won pageants, and made our parents beam. Me? I was the shadow, the backup plan, the one who stayed behind to take care of Grandma when no one else would. I did the chores, drove her to appointments, sat beside her when she forgot my name. I never asked for recognition, but I thought maybe I'd earned some respect. When Grandma passed, she left the house to me. In her will, she wrote, "Because Natalie stayed." Just 3 words, but they lit a fire. Suddenly, I was no longer the forgotten daughter. I was the threat, holding something they couldn't control. My parents were furious. They asked. They begged. They guilt-tripped. They said I was ungrateful, that I was tearing the family apart, that I didn't deserve it. Ashley cried like it was theater. My mother said I was stealing her childhood home. My father called me a traitor. Then came the silence. The pressure. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors crossed the street. Even my boss at the local bookstore started treating me cold. Every Sunday at church, I sat alone, whispers behind my back. Smiles that faded when I looked up. And when all their tactics failed, they kicked me out. No goodbye. No second chance. No remorse. Just a slammed door. And me, standing outside, with a suitcase, a dying phone battery, and a storm rolling in. That's how it began. Not with a fight, but with a decision, a house, and a family that chose pride over love. I don't remember what day it was, just that it was raining. One of those slow gray afternoons where the clouds feel heavy enough to crush you. I was sitting at the kitchen table, still wearing the sweater Grandma had knitted me years ago. The one with the slightly uneven sleeves and a coffee stain near the collar. Comfort in a fabric. Across from me, my mother stirred her tea like it was a loaded weapon. Ashley scrolled her phone, pretending not to watch me. My father? He stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out like he was the one being punished. Then came the folder. A thick manila envelope tossed onto the table with an audible slap. Deed transfer papers. My mother didn't ask. She instructed. Her tone sharper than the rain tapping on the roof. "You're going to sign this today," she said. I opened the folder. Saw the lines they'd drawn in highlighter. Saw where my name had already been typed in. Like it wasn't mine to begin with. My hands trembled. "I'm not selling the house," I whispered. Ashley scoffed. My father exhaled through his nose, the way he always did when I disappointed him. "You're being selfish," Mom hissed. "That house belongs to this family. I am family," I said. "Barely," Ashley muttered, not even looking up. Something cracked in me. Maybe the last thread holding me to them. I stood up, told them I was done talking, that I was going to stay at a friend's place for a while, that I needed space. But space wasn't what they gave me. That night, I returned from my shift at the bookstore, and the locks had been changed. My key didn't fit. My things? Tossed into 3 garbage bags left at the curb, soaked with rain. There was no note, no message, just silence. I remember standing there, bags at my feet, clothes sticking to my arms, watching the lights in the living room flicker like nothing had changed. But everything had. I sat in my car that night, wet and shaking, turned the engine on just for heat, stared at the dashboard clock, watching the minutes crawl. I thought of calling someone, anyone, but shame held my phone hostage. Who wants to hear that you've been kicked out by your own parents? That your little sister watched and did nothing? The next day I drove around. Nowhere to go. Just movement to drown the panic. I stopped in front of the house again. Part of me still expected someone to open the door, to say it was a misunderstanding, to bring me back in. But all I got was the blinds being pulled shut. That's when it hit me. They didn't want me. Not even as an inconvenience. I wasn't their daughter. I was just a problem they'd finally solved. Something in me hardened that day. Not hate. Not yet. But something cold and necessary. I went to my storage unit, pulled out the few boxes I had left from college, found a spare blanket, a pillow. Slept in the car again. 2 nights. Then 4. Then a week. I learned where the safest Walmart parking lots were, where you could find free Wi-Fi, which gas stations didn't ask questions if you loitered. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't ask for help. My pride wouldn't let me. But beneath the stubbornness, something else had started growing. Not just survival. Not just anger. Purpose. They thought they could break me. But in their rejection, they handed me something powerful. Freedom. Sleeping in a car isn't just uncomfortable, it's humbling. It strips you of illusions. Every creak, every gust of wind feels like it's whispering, "You don't belong anywhere." I'd park behind grocery stores, near all-night diners, places that had light and noise, as if I could pretend I wasn't really alone. But every morning reality hit hard. Washing up in gas station bathrooms, brushing my teeth with a water bottle and paper towel, applying mascara in a cracked rearview mirror so I'd still look normal when I went to my part-time job at the bookstore. No one there knew. Or if they did, they never said a word. I smiled. I shelved books. I answered phones, then went back to my car and prayed the security guard wouldn't tap my window that night. One Friday evening, as I sat outside a laundromat charging my phone, I saw a woman handing out hot meals from her van. She wore a blue windbreaker and had silver hair tied back in a braid. Her name was Carla. She offered me a styrofoam box and a kind smile. I wanted to say no. My pride flared up like a wound being touched. But hunger makes the truth impossible to ignore. So I took it, sat on the curb, ate like it was the first real meal in weeks. Carla didn't ask questions. She sat beside me, unbothered by the smell of detergent or car exhaust. After a while, she said, "You don't look like someone who gives up easy." I laughed, but it came out like a sob. That night, she told me about her group, a small nonprofit that offered meals, hygiene kits, sometimes even motel rooms when they had enough donations. I didn't ask for help, but she gave it anyway. The next week, I volunteered. I sorted canned goods, handed out water bottles, helped clean up a church parking lot. It was supposed to be temporary, just something to feel useful again. But something shifted. In those faces, tired, scared, kind, I saw parts of myself. People who'd lost jobs, homes, families. Not because they were bad, but because life had been cruel. One woman named Martha had been a nurse for 20 years. Then cancer took her savings, and her landlord raised the rent. Now she lived in her car with her teenage son. She smiled more than anyone I knew. I started bringing books from the store to share. Kids' books, novels, poetry. They read them like treasure. I stopped feeling ashamed of where I was. Because these people, they weren't broken. They were surviving, rebuilding, fighting to exist in a world that forgot them. And I was one of them. But unlike many, I had something they didn't. A deed. A house. Even if I didn't live in it, I still owned it. That thought burned in the back of my mind. What if it could mean more than a memory? What if I could turn that house, the one filled with pain, betrayal, and silence, into something better? A place with open doors, with light in the windows, with warmth that didn't come with conditions. That night I opened Grandma's will again. Read the words slowly. Because Natalie stayed. Maybe she wasn't just giving me a house. Maybe she was giving me a mission. It started with a real estate listing. I wasn't searching for it. I was browsing out of habit, scrolling mindlessly through local properties, when I saw the photo. The same brick archway. The same blue shutters I once painted with Grandma. Carson House. Listed. For sale. They had put it on the market. Without shame. Without hesitation. The asking price was high. Too high for someone working part-time and sleeping in her car 6 months ago. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I stared at the listing for hours. Not because I missed it, but because I realized something. If I didn't act now, that house would fall into someone else's hands. It would become someone else's memory. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to reclaim what was mine. Not to live in, but to transform. I reached out to Carla's nonprofit, told them I had a plan. One that could give more than meals. A place. A home. Carla listened. She didn't ask too many questions. She put me in touch with someone, a retired attorney named Harold, who once specialized in property law, now volunteering to help low-income clients. We sat in a church basement, surrounded by folding chairs and donated clothes. I showed him the will, the original deed, explained how I had been pushed out, how they were trying to erase me. He nodded slowly, then smiled. "You don't want to fight them?" he asked. I shook my head. "I want to buy it. Legally. No drama. Just justice." It took weeks. Phone calls, paperwork, Patience. Carla's group helped me launch a small fundraiser. Martha spread the word. Even kids I'd read stories to helped decorate flyers. And then something miraculous happened. People donated. Not because they knew me, but because they knew what it felt like to be cast aside. Because they believed a mansion shouldn't just sit cold and locked when so many slept in doorways. Within 2 months, I had just enough, plus a silent investor Carla connected me with. I hired Harold to negotiate. Kept my name out of everything. When my parents received the offer, they must have thought they hit the jackpot. A cash buyer, no questions asked. They signed. Eager. Greedy. They never knew it was me. The day the papers were finalized, I didn't cry. I walked through the front door, alone. No bags. No memories. Just breath. The house felt hollow. Not haunted, just emptied out of meaning. Rooms that once echoed with holiday laughter now sat in silence. The wallpaper had yellowed. The floors creaked. But beneath the decay, I saw potential. I walked into my old room. The closet still had a chipped sticker that said "Dream Big." I smiled. Not out of nostalgia, but resolve. That night, I stood in the backyard. Same garden Grandma once planted marigolds in. Same tree swing Ashley used to hog all summer. I lit a single candle, held it to the wind, and made a silent vow. This house won't hurt anyone else. Not under my name. Not ever again. Tomorrow I would begin. Not just renovations, but redemption. I walked through the mansion's front doors with nothing but a toolbox and a heartbeat full of purpose. This wasn't about revenge. It was about rewriting a story that had once nearly broken me. The place looked exactly how I remembered it. Grand, hollow, echoing with memories both bitter and beautiful. But this time I wasn't here as a daughter seeking approval. I was here as a builder of something new. The first thing I did was walk into the old dining room, where my father had once shouted at me for dreaming too big. Now it would become a community kitchen. We tore up the cold tile floors, laid down warm wooden planks, painted the walls with sunlit gold. The long table, once a symbol of hierarchy, became a place of sharing. My sister's bedroom, once off limits to everyone, became a nursery for homeless mothers and children. We filled it with soft rugs, clean cribs, and shelves of donated baby books. A sign over the door read "New Beginnings." Every room had a new name, a new purpose. We replaced the silence with music, the bitterness with laughter, loneliness with connection. Volunteers arrived daily. We patched the drywall, replaced broken windows, installed solar panels. Every person brought a story. Every object carried hope. One elderly man arrived with handcrafted bookshelves and quietly said, "My daughter was on the streets. She didn't make it. This is for her." We named a reading corner after her, Clara's Nook, and I made sure there was always light in that corner. The backyard transformed from a tangled mess into a blooming community garden. We planted tomatoes, basil, and lavender. Children helped water the plants. Neighbors donated tools. One man hung string lights that turned the space into magic at dusk. On Saturday nights, we hosted open-air movie screenings. We projected films onto the old mansion wall and laid out blankets on the grass. Laughter filled the air. People who had once slept in silence now laughed together beneath the stars. I created a bulletin board near the front door. It displayed job postings, class schedules, and handwritten notes from residents. Angela got hired. Group art therapy Thursday at 6 p.m. Movie night, Lion King. One woman, Lila, who had once lived in a laundromat, now ran the front desk. She greeted everyone with a smile and called them guests, never homeless. She once said to me, "People don't need pity, they need dignity." We hung framed drawings from the kids on the walls. One drawing showed the mansion glowing with windows full of light. Underneath, a child had written, "This house helped my mom smile again." I stood in the master bedroom one evening, now converted into a supply room. Towels, coats, hygiene kits lined the shelves. No more shouting, no more fear, just warmth. I looked out the same window where I once watched my life fall apart and whispered, "You never knew what this place could become." The transformation wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. It was emotional. We didn't just rebuild a house. We rebuilt stories, reclaimed space, restored hope. This mansion, once a cage of control, had become a sanctuary. Not just for others, but for me. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was holding on to survival. I felt like I was leading something greater. A home. A movement. A future. The day they came back was both expected and completely surreal. It was a Sunday afternoon, the sun was high, the garden was in bloom, and we had just finished a poetry reading with some of the residents. Laughter still lingered in the air when the front bell rang. I opened the door, and there they were. My mother, my father, and behind them my sister, now a shadow of her former self. They didn't recognize me at first. I was in overalls, covered in paint, my hair pulled back. Not the Natalie they remembered. "Can we speak to the owner?" my father asked stiffly, his voice strained. I paused, then stepped aside. "You just did." Their eyes widened. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My sister let out a breath like she'd been holding it for years. They entered the house slowly, cautiously, like it was haunted. In a way, it was. Not by ghosts, but by echoes of the past. My father looked around the foyer, blinking at the colorful murals. My mother ran her hand along the banister, whispering, "It's so different." "Yes," I said quietly, "it is." Then came silence, awkward, heavy. My sister was the first to speak. "Natalie, we didn't know this place was yours. We didn't even know where you went." "You didn't ask," I replied flatly. "You threw me out and moved on. Until now." My father stepped forward. "We're not here to argue. We've lost a lot." My mother nodded, her voice trembling. "The investments failed. The house was foreclosed. We didn't have anywhere else to go." I crossed my arms. "You came to the place you sold out from under me, hoping it might save you again." My sister stepped in, eyes glassy. "Please, I'm not proud of what we did. None of us are." I looked at them. 3 people who had once turned their backs on me now stood with nowhere else to turn. And I won't lie, part of me wanted to scream, to slam the door, to make them feel what I felt the night I slept in my car. Cold, forgotten, worthless. But then I remembered the women sleeping upstairs. The children laughing in the garden. Lila at the front desk, calling strangers guests with dignity. Revenge had brought them to my doorstep. But healing had built the house. I took a deep breath. "I'm not going to turn you away," I said finally. "But this isn't the home you remember. It's not a mansion. It's a shelter, a place of service. Everyone here contributes." They looked at one another, confused. My voice was calm but firm. "If you want a roof over your head, you'll help cook. Clean, volunteer, like everyone else." My father's jaw clenched. My mother looked down, but my sister nodded. "Then let us earn it," she said. "Let us start over." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. That night, I saw my mother helping Carla fold laundry. My father silently scrubbing dishes. My sister reading to children in the playroom. And in that quiet moment, I realized something. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's just watching the people who hurt you learn what it means to rebuild. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone on the front porch with a mug of lukewarm tea. The stars overhead blinked gently, as if reminding me of the vastness of everything, of time, of healing, of choice. My family was asleep inside, in rooms that once symbolized power, pride, and separation, now filled with sleeping bags, volunteers, and quiet humility. And still I couldn't sleep. Not because I was angry, though I had every right to be, but because forgiveness isn't simple. It isn't just saying I forgive you and watching pain disappear. Forgiveness is heavy, it's layered, it demands reflection, courage, and sometimes letting go of justice as we imagined it. They had taken so much from me, my home, my safety, my sense of worth. And now they were asking for space in the very thing they tried to destroy. What kind of person would I be if I said yes? What kind of person would I become if I said no? The question looped in my mind. Then I remembered something one of the residents, Martha, told me once. Bitterness builds walls, but kindness, it builds bridges. So I made a choice. The next morning, I called a house meeting. Everyone gathered in the main hall, residents, volunteers, and my family. I stood in front of them, heart racing, palms sweating. I want to talk about justice, I began, and about service. I looked directly at my parents and sister. You hurt me deeply. What you did was cruel. But this place, it's not about revenge. It's about transformation. Murmurs spread through the room. Some nodded, others just listened. This shelter exists because of what happened, because I know what it's like to be cast aside, and I never want anyone else to feel that way. I turned to the group. So here's my offer. They can stay, but they don't get special treatment. My father shifted in his seat. My mother clutched her hands. My sister blinked hard. They will serve meals, clean toilets, help with repairs. They'll earn their place like everyone else. And maybe, over time, they'll understand the weight of what they did. No one applauded. No one needed to. The moment was still. Heavy. Sacred. Later that day, I found my mother in the laundry room folding blankets beside Lila. She didn't say much, but when I walked past, she whispered, "Thank you." In the kitchen, my father was scrubbing pots. And in the playroom, my sister sat cross-legged, braiding a young girl's hair. It wasn't about guilt anymore. It wasn't even about punishment. It was about breaking cycles. It was about doing better, together. That night, I walked through the halls of the mansion-turned-shelter and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because I chose to lead with purpose instead of pain. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, but it gave the future a fighting chance. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. A local reporter had caught wind of our shelter, a former mansion-turned-safe haven, and asked to do a story. I hesitated at first. I never started this place to get attention. But after talking with the residents, we agreed people deserved to know that change was possible. By Friday, a news van pulled up the driveway. The cameras rolled. Microphones clipped to collars. Smiles rehearsed and nervous. The anchor's voice was bright and practiced. Today, we bring you a story of redemption, resilience, and the power of compassion. I stood in front of the house, sunlight behind me, surrounded by the people who made this shelter come alive. I spoke about what brought me here. The betrayal. The nights in the car. The long days scrubbing tile and planting seeds, literal and emotional. They aired it that evening. And overnight, everything exploded. Comments. Emails. Donations. People asking how they could help. Some asking how they could stay. But the part that made me pause, that made me cry, was the way the story traveled. Not just across the country, but into the hearts of people who had been cast aside like I once was. People who saw themselves in me. And then came the twist I never expected. 2 weeks later, I was invited to a live national morning show. Producers flew me out, set me up in a hotel, prepped me for every question. But nothing could prepare me for what happened live on air. Halfway through the segment, after I'd shared my story, the host smiled and said, "We have a surprise guest joining us. Please welcome Natalie's family." The audience gasped. I froze. They walked onto the stage slowly. My mother first, then my father, then my sister. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the host gently asked, "Is there anything you'd like to say?" My mother's voice trembled. "Natalie, we failed you. As parents, as people, we let pride ruin our love." My father looked straight ahead. "We watched the broadcast last week, and for the first time, we saw what you went through. We're not here to ask for sympathy, just accountability." My sister stepped forward. "We're not the same people anymore, but we want to be better. And if this is the only way we can show it, then we'll do it publicly." Tears blurred my vision. I wasn't sure what to say. I only knew the world was watching. So I took a breath, and I spoke from the place that had taken a year of pain to find. "This isn't about revenge," I said. This is about rewriting the legacy of this house, of this family. The audience stood and applauded. After the show, strangers hugged me in the streets. Emails flooded in from shelters asking how to build what we'd built. People wrote poems, letters. One woman sent a painting of the mansion, blooming with vines. The house that once symbolized rejection had become a symbol of refuge. And I had become something I never expected to be. A voice for those who thought they had none. The house was quiet. Outside, golden dusk settled over the garden. Through the windows, warm light spilled across the floor. From the kitchen, soft laughter echoed, the volunteers finishing dinner cleanup. I sat by the window, cradling a cup of chamomile tea, watching the day fade gently into night. 1 year ago, I slept in my car outside this very gate. Now I sit inside, not as someone who reclaimed a mansion, but as someone who rebuilt her peace. This place was never just about me. It was about what happens when people are given a second chance. It was about turning pain into purpose. My family was still here. Not perfect, but present. Serving food, folding blankets, learning humility one chore at a time. As for me, I was no longer just the daughter cast aside. I became a woman who turned a wound into a well, a house into a home, a betrayal into a bridge. People often ask, have you truly forgiven them? And my answer is always the same. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's letting go of the weight that keeps you from moving forward. Justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like transformation. I walk these halls now with quiet pride, not because I won, but because I chose not to become what broke me. There are children reading in the library, a mother planting tomatoes with her son in the garden, my father humming softly as he hangs new curtains. This house, once a symbol of rejection, is now a sanctuary. And me, I've become something I never expected, a voice for the silenced, a shelter for the abandoned. I glance toward the camera. The sun is setting behind me, and I ask you, if your family cast you out and came back broken, would you forgive them? Tell me in the comments. Would you choose to forgive that or walk away? And if you believe that justice can sometimes look like grace, please like this video, subscribe to Heartless Revenge, and join us in telling more stories that heal what the world tries to erase. Because maybe the ones left behind are the ones with the most powerful stories to tell.